A brief history of the domino theory. The domino theory existed from the 1950s to the 1980s. It was promoted at times by the United States government and speculated that if one state in a region came under the influence of communism, then the surrounding countries would follow in a domino effect. The domino theory was used by successive United States administrations during the Cold War to justify the need for American intervention around the world. In 1945, the Soviet Union brought most of the countries of Eastern Europe and Central Europe under its influence as part of the post-World War II New Settlement. Following the Iran crisis of 1946, Harry Truman declared what became known as the Truman Doctrine in 1947, promising to contribute financial aid to Greece during their civil war and to Turkey following World War II, in the hope that this would impede the advancement of communism into Western Europe. In 1949, a communist-backed government led by Mao Zedong was instated in China. The installation of the new government was established after the People's Liberation Army defeated the Nationalist Republican government of China in the aftermath of the Chinese Civil War. Two Chinas were formed, mainland Communist China and Nationalist China, Taiwan. The takeover by communists of the world's most populous nation was seen in the West as a strategic loss, prompting the popular question at the time, who lost China? The United States subsequently ended diplomatic relations with China in response to the communist takeover in 1949. Korea had also partially fallen under Soviet domination at the end of World War II, and in 1950 fighting broke out between communists and republicans that soon involved troops from China and the United States and 15 allied countries. The war has not officially ended to this day, but the fighting ended in 1953 with an armistice that left Korea divided into two nations, North Korea and South Korea. In May 1954, the Viet Minh, a communist and nationalist army, defeated French troops in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu and took control of what became North Vietnam. This caused the French to fully withdraw from the region, then known as French Indochina, a process they had begun earlier. The regions were then divided into four independent countries: North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos, after a deal was brokered at the 1954 Geneva Conference to end the First Indochina War. President Eisenhower was the first to refer to countries in danger of communist takeover as dominoes, in a response to a journalist's question about Indochina on the 7th of April 1954, although he did not use the term domino theory. If communists succeed in taking over the rest of Indochina, Eisenhower argued, local groups would then have the encouragement, material support and momentum to take over Burma, Thailand, Malaya and Indonesia. All of these countries had large popular communist movements and insurgencies within their borders at the time. This would give them a geographical and economic strategic advantage, and it would make Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia and New Zealand the frontline defensive states. The loss of the regions traditionally within the vital regional trading area of countries like Japan would encourage the frontline countries to compromise politically with communism. Eisenhower's domino theory of 1954 was a specific description of the situation and conditions within Southeast Asia at the time, and he did not suggest a generalised domino theory as others did afterward. The John F. Kennedy administration intervened in Vietnam in the early 1960s to, among other reasons, keep the South Vietnamese domino from falling. When Kennedy came to power, there was concern that communist-led Viet Lao in Laos would provide the Viet Cong with bases and that eventually they could take over Laos. Domino theory has also been applied in modern day times, such as the War on Terror, to bring stability to areas which may be influenced by political parties.